entendemos. Este painel vai então falar, vai ser, na verdade, sobre políticas e estratégias para a África. António de Sousa é que estava ao microfone para falar para vocês. É o mestre de cerimónias, é o moderador deste painel. Como ouviram, será conduzido em inglês. À vontade.
Thank you very much, Dinamen. Good afternoon for all. This is a panel, as the MC just introduced the topic. For the panel, I have the following members. Mr. Tarun Rao, representing Google Cloud in Africa. Yes? Yeah, mic on, please. Microphone switch over. You may have a seat.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, you may. Okay. We also have, as part of the panel, Mr. Daniel Acton, representing ADG, African Digital Group. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
All right. For the first take, I'll start with you, Mr. Tarun Rao, from Google Cloud in Africa. What is really Google doing in Africa in terms of strategies and policies?
That's a great question, and I think it's very important that before we answer the what are we doing in Africa, that we answer why Africa first. And I want to spend a bit of time on that. I think folks in this forum will not be strangers to the fact that Africa is a young continent. The average age of Africans is 18 years old, and I believe that that is on average 12 years younger than any other continent on the planet. Let that sink in for a bit. Also add to that that the average African is 14 years old or younger. 40% of the average African population is 14 years old or younger. It presents an interesting population dynamic. It's an interesting demographic for the future. It's an interesting problem to solve for, because these are the people that will need to participate in the economy of the future, the digital economy of the future. It's a meaningful problem to tussle with. It's a meaningful problem to address. Let's look at this also from a Google perspective. How does Google look at Africa? You will be very familiar, and you're no strangers to Google's products and platforms. There's Google Search that has been around for the last 26 years or so. There's YouTube, there's Android, there's now Google Cloud, which you will hear about shortly as well. All of these products have been around for a long time, and a large number of these products see up to 1 billion users using our platform on a daily basis.
Are you talking about Africa specifically? Do you have figures
across the
for
world?
Africa? Specifically?
A large portion of the African continent, on the basis of the fact that they use the Android's penetration here, there is a large number using our services here too. The important aspect here to remember is, and from a Google perspective, is this. The question that we ask ourselves: where do the next 1 billion users on our platform come from?
Africa?
Africa is the answer. It has to be Africa. Towards this end, and it is in this framing that I'd like to answer the question, what is our strategy for Africa?
Quickly, because we have also to have the first take from Mr. Daniel.
Ah, of course.
This is just the first take.
No worries, no worries. So I'll address the strategic side and we'll go to Daniel.
Yes, yes.
So what is Google's strategy for Africa? Our CEO, Sundar Pichai, recently announced our intent to pledge $1 billion of investment into the continent.
Okay.
This investment is not a promise, or doesn't just remain a promise. It has started to manifest already. And there's a couple of ways in which we're doing this. One is with infrastructure. We've heard numerous views at this very conference how important infrastructure is to digital transformation. So first and foremost, we're improving internet access in Africa. We're doing so by, we have laid a cable called our Equiano cable that starts in Portugal, terminates in Cape Town, and it brings with it the promise of increased bandwidth, better internet speeds, allowing access to internet. I remember the minister, the Honorable Minister yesterday telling us that the penetration of internet in Africa is close to 60% and 37% in Angola. It's, again, a meaningful problem to solve for. Secondly, from an infrastructure perspective, is our region. Google Cloud has recently, as recently as January of this year, launched our first cloud region on the continent in Johannesburg, South Africa. Another important aspect, I've spent a few days now in Luanda, a few days in Angola. It's a theme that has presented itself in the various conversations that I've had, and that is skills and access to skills. Angola needs to be able to attract skills, to build skills, to retain skills as well. Towards this end, Google will also contribute. We've pledged to train across the continent 10,000 developers and up to 10 million people when it comes to digital skills on the continent.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Daniel Acton from ADG, African Digital Group. We'd like also to have your first take. Let's bear on the strategic plan of your company. It's an African-based company. We know you're based in Kenya, right? So can you tell us about the strategic plan of your company?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, Africa Digital Group, we're Google Cloud's biggest partner across Africa. Our organization was born in Kenya, in Nairobi in Kenya. We have presence in South Africa, here in Angola, in Ethiopia, and how we expand is where we see opportunity. So our strategy is really to understand the needs of what the African population is faced with. And when we look at, I'm just looking at the slogan for ANGOTIC. I'll translate it into English if I might. Digitize, connect, and innovate.
Okay.
And so we see a lot of opportunity for technology to help digitize, to help connect, and help innovate. And so what we'll discuss in a bit more detail as we go here is what are the things, what are the tactical projects we're getting involved in to push each of these initiatives forward using technologies. We're a technology company, so using technologies to get there. So I'll pause there.
Okay.
I won't give you all the information up front.
All right.
Keep you excited for just now.
Okay. Let's continue talking about the strategies and policies. Looking at the investments, let's talk about money. Money for a very positive purpose, which is capacity building, training the youth. That's the target. What can you tell us about investments you're doing in Africa? If you can be more specific in
Sure.
terms of money.
I'd be happy to pick that up. When I introduced the topic of how Google is playing in Africa, I spoke about the next billion users coming from Africa.
Okay.
Towards that end, a significant portion of our investments have gone into building centers of excellence, and this solves two things. The first is building skills and capability for the continent, and then, as I'd mentioned a little bit earlier, it enables people to participate meaningfully in these digital economies. The first such...
Sorry, don't forget your point, but just interrupting you to be more specific in terms of the centers of excellence that
Yeah,
you
absolutely. And
how many centers of excellence you have built so far, and in which countries, in what countries?
absolutely, right. Good question. We built 2 centers of excellence.
Okay.
The first one sits in Ghana, and its sole purpose is to focus on AI and make AI meaningful for the continent. I'll just give you an example of actually a single use case. Weather and adverse weather patterns is something that we in Africa are not strangers to. A meaningful use case that has come out of the AI Center of Excellence in Ghana is to be able to predict floods, the flow of floods. And the idea here is to minimize loss of life and damage to infrastructure, key infrastructure. There is a second Center of Excellence, if I may add to that. And this sits out of East Africa in Nairobi. The responsibility of this Center of Excellence, it's a product development center if I want to be more specific, is to build products for Africa. And this is obviously African products built by African developers for Africa. Moving that meter on digital transformation.
Okay. Mr. Daniel, we just, running to the digital transformation of the continent. In terms of policy, when you talk about policies, of course, we look at not only investments, but regulations or legislation. So how can you see these two things? In one hand, we have legislation, and on the other hand, we have also the infrastructures.
So of course, you will have heard of things like artificial intelligence, things like cloud. On the one hand, these are great forces and technical capabilities to innovate. On the other hand, they create a new world that we must be sure we're safely stepping into. And so there's really that balance. So we need to create policies that enable the use of cloud, public cloud infrastructure, but do so in a way that protect citizen information. So what we see in a number of countries is data privacy laws. In Europe, they have GDPR. There's many countries in Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, have adopted a similar framework. And this governs how organizations inside the country, outside the country, can use citizens' data. And so what we, as Africa Digital Group, have experienced in this area is a need to comply with those regulations, but also help understand them for our customers. So if we're working, for example, with a bank in Kenya as an example, understanding better what the policy translated into technology means. What can we do? What can't we do? How do we use the technical capabilities of a product to use the right controls to safeguard data? So that's an example around data privacy. There's also a big amount of discussion around artificial intelligence, as I'm sure you've heard. And one of the things that maybe Tarun can expound on is the need for safe artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And some of the work that Google's doing in that area is very important. So Tarun, maybe you can share.
Okay, yes, Taro, please give us more insights on this AI issue, because nowadays there is a hot debate on the pedagogic area aside the perspective of the AI, because some of the information coming from artificial intelligence are seen, not healthy to the kids or to the young people, because they normally follow this very important tool, which should be to enable knowledge rather than just introducing bad habits, bad influence to the young people.
Spot on, and a very meaningful question once more. The way Google looks at this, and if one extrapolates that one level higher, the way technology companies in the world should be looking at this should be from a position of responsibility. Ultimately, when AI is being used to garner, search for information, use information, and make decisions from this information, one needs to be very careful about how that information is served. One needs to be responsible about where the information comes from, the format it takes when it is served to an individual using an AI to ask questions. So in this space, Google has come up with our tenets, what we call our tenets for responsible AI. Obviously, one very important factor here are the ethical considerations. Anything that we say have to be grounded in the right ethics and responsible ethics. Secondly, AI has to be used for the benefit of humankind. Any use case that we identify cannot be frivolous. If one need only search, Google search, for applications of large language models, and you'll see many different applications out there. Some useful, some not so useful. So we're at this juncture as Google to ensure that when AI gets applied, its applications are responsible. And lastly, but probably most importantly, facts, data, information that comes out of these searches and these large language models have to be grounded in reality, have to be grounded in fact. So we've taken steps to ensure that any data returned has a very clear link that actually proves where the data comes from. Just implying the responsibility and improving the responsible position.
When you talk about this, using the AI in a responsible manner, in a responsible way, there is also a problem of just blocking the freedom of speech. How do you see this regulation for the social media or for AI for instance, and also the issue of trying to not allow the freedoms, which is one of the human rights? Daniel, please.
Yes, so look, I think the balancing act that I referred to earlier applies here again. We need to, if we want to innovate in general now, if we want to innovate, we need to adopt the technologies that can help us do that, to create new revenue streams, to create new experiences that didn't exist before, and to create financial inclusion. The reason I mentioned these things is to highlight the fact that there is huge benefit from innovation. And so we want to take that benefit, right? We want to innovate, we want to digitize. But in the context of the fact that we're dealing with citizen and user and customer information, it's about the controls we have in place. And those controls can be technology controls, of course, but they can also be policy controls. And so I think that, how we should proceed and how we certainly proceed with our customers is through the conversation. If we all agree that there's benefit to be had out of innovation, we have a starting point. And then we need to work forward together to unlock the value by putting in place the safeguards, but not being too inhibitive of attaining that innovation. So I think it really is a discussion between policymakers and technologists or organizations at large.
Okay, knowledge and technology transfer really stimulates local innovation for the African continent. So how do you see this important strategic aspect which deals with capacity buildings, skills to the African people to use these very important tools when you're talking about digital transformation? Rao, please. Mr. Rao, please.
Yeah, and, the Google perspective on this is largely informed by the work we're doing in our cloud space. We look at solving for digital transformation through leveraging 5 pillars. The first is data, And I start with data because in a world where AI is becoming very topical, if you do not fix your data, if you are not able to leverage your data within your organization, within the context of your work, you'll be unable to build any meaning.
Casos significativos quanto à inteligência artificial. Então, nós fizemos, por meio dos nossos serviços da cloud, ou da nuvem do Google, acesso ao nosso armazém de dados, e você vai poder usar a mesma tecnologia que a Google nos últimos 26 anos usa, e também para equilibrar os benefícios para si mesma na questão de como é que nós usamos os nossos dados. A mesma tecnologia está disponível eu já mencionei a inteligência artificial, e a número 3 são infraestruturas, a habilidade de criar, de usar infraestruturas informáticas para ter acesso a estas infraestruturas, para poder gerir as suas aplicações, é um componente-chave para este mercado também. Tudo isto está sobreposto em ter uma abordagem que seja segura, primitiva, facilitação de segurança dentro desta nuvem. A nossa abordagem em termos de resolver, pelo menos para a transformação digital, eu espero que tenha respondido essa questão. Eu também preciso que o Daniel dê alguma informação sobre acesso à infraestrutura digital. Claro, há coisas como cabos subterrâneos, nós temos também, a Google tem estes cabos na costa oeste da África. Nós precisamos falar sobre estas partes interessadas aqui em Angola e também com a Google, e estar juntos e ver como é que como pode Angola usar estes cabos ultramarinos, essas capacidades, porque uma das coisas que nós ouvimos ao interagir com pessoas aqui no país é acesso a infraestruturas, redes, pode estar melhor. Nós podemos sempre expandir, e é uma área que nós devemos observar, nós devemos prestar atenção, e meu colega mencionou sobre a segurança cibernética e outros pilares da abordagem da Google para a transformação digital, e nós gostaria também de adicionar quanto à questão de capacidades, ou capacitação. Há duas formas de olhar para o desenvolvimento de capacidades e também capacitação. Uma é a grande escala, um programa ou iniciativa de grande escala que nós gostaríamos muito de deliberar com o governo e trazer um modelo que nós podemos abrir uma formação, um programa de formação na grande escala. E outra forma que nós podemos fazer é baseando nas oportunidades que surjam. Por exemplo, há muitas organizações em Angola que nós falamos muito com algumas delas que eles querem muito adotar estas novas tecnologias. Mas a barreira são as capacidades. Então, talvez algo no meio tenhamos objetivo baseado no desenvolvimento de capacidades, uma organização que precisa dessas organizações, nós ajudamos-las, e depois passamos para a próxima que precisa dessa ajuda. Isso vai levar tempo, mas nós precisamos deste tempo. Então, nós temos uma abordagem que nós não necessariamente temos que fazer um grande programa a longo prazo, mas nós podemos fazer algo neste interim. Enquanto nós fazemos também formações a pequena escala aqui em Angola para questões como cloud, nuvem e segurança cibernética, nós fizemos formações com centenas de técnicos a estarem juntos. É a forma que nós podemos olhar para resolver estes problemas, é a forma como nós resolvemos em outros países. São estas abordagens que nós tomamos, mas eu acredito que também aqui pode funcionar. Senhora Ralph, pode comentar sobre a força-tarefa que o continente africano representa. Quanto à criação de postos de trabalho, quando fala sobre o planos estratégicos e políticas para o continente, é uma boa questão e é algo que nós podemos realçar na questão na resposta do Daniel, esta noção de que nós precisamos de começar de algum lugar, esta noção de, vamos tomar o exemplo de ter um centro de excelência, a ideia por detrás disso é capacitar digitais e tornar estas capacidades acessíveis, as pessoas vão poder aprender, ver os seus construtivos, capacidades que vão ser importantes para a participação na economia. No contexto da nuvem, as coisas tornam-se mais fáceis. A razão pela qual digo isto, porque à medida que vai tomar plataformas maiores que estão disponíveis na nuvem, não precisa ter grandes capacidades para lidar com essas coisas como capacitação de low code. Alguns podem entender o que é necessário para poder construir uma aplicação. Temos plataformas que não precisam de código para construir aplicações e produtos e para alavancar o mercado. Esta habilidade de fazer isso e acelerar esta forma e verificando as capacidades mais aprofundadas vai permitir-lhes participar e criar oportunidades para a criação de postos de trabalho. O senhor Daniel pode falar sobre números em termos de criação de postos de trabalho em África, da perspectiva do seu país, da sua empresa. É difícil falar sobre estes números agora. Eu lembro que um número de tempos mais recentes de que a região da nuvem da Google, que foi lançada na África do Sul, criou milhares de postos de trabalho diretos e até pessoas que vão criar soluções quanto a estas questões. Eu não tenho o número exato de postos de trabalho que nós criamos, mas vou explicar como é que estes postos de trabalho vão ser criados por meio desta iniciativa. Se nós temos um ambiente em que a inovação pode acontecer, há um provérbio que eu gosto muito, que é a necessidade é a mãe da invenção. Não há falta de necessidade ou oportunidades ou problemas para resolver em nenhum país da África, certo? E se o ambiente é o certo, isto também tem a ver com as políticas quanto ao uso de nuvem, quanto ao uso de inteligência artificial e tecnologias. Isto torna-se muito importante porque é mais fácil para as pessoas usar estas tecnologias do que coisas novas acontecerem. Então, como é que isto flui? Genericamente falando, estas grandes empresas vão adotar as tecnologias. Nós vimos isto acontecer nos fornecedores de telecomunicações no continente. Eles estão a precisar de capacidades porque estas empresas precisam. O que acontece? Essas pessoas deixam esta organização e vão.
They take their skills with them. But the original organization needs to fill those skills. So it's a necessarily increasing number of skills. And then eventually what happens is the environment is correct for innovation. And those people get tired of the corporate life and they do startups. And this is how it flows. We've seen this happen again and again. If the environment is correct, the startups will flourish, and that's where innovation really creates jobs and creates value in the economy.
Yes, Mr. Rao, what are the barriers you encountering while implementing your policies and strategies in Africa?
In a large part, it's awareness. It's an understanding that embracing cloud need not be this big bad wolf that is in the room and chasing you down. It is understandable that as we engage with organizations, as we engage with countries, that people take a conservative stance on how cloud and the technologies that it implies and its implications for the country. So we're working very closely as Google with regulators within a lot of African countries to be able to create this awareness and educate the benefit of cloud.
specifically as a lot of our technologies, from a security perspective, from a privacy perspective, have been tried and tested in more established markets like Europe and the Americas and Asia to a certain extent as well. So there is that learning that we can bring. So I think a large impediment to that we need to solve for as Google and working with a larger ecosystem of partners such as yourself within Angola as well, is to create that awareness.
Okay. Is it the same? You're just finding, implementing your projects in Africa?
It's very much the same. Somebody said this to me yesterday. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think identifying opportunity.
When it's about an African elephant, it's a huge one. It's a giant elephant.
Exactly.
So
it's impossible to eat at once, right? Many small bites. And I think the reality is that trying to solve for the whole problem at once is very hard and will take a long time. Rather, let's start somewhere small. You know? Maybe we come back on stage next year and you ask about the numbers again. All right? And we say, how many people have we, to Tarun's point, enabled? Have we created awareness about our programs, our technologies, our capabilities? And I think we will have a different discussion next year. Because our intention, you know, as Africa Digital Group, we're here in Angola. We want to build those skills. We want to help drive this digital transformation. So it'll be a really good opportunity next year at ANGOTIC 2025 to have the same discussion.
Yes, Mr. Tarun Rao, I'll ask you to elaborate more on what do you see happening in Africa in terms of digital transformation. I think you can share the question.
Sure. There's an interesting contrast developing in Africa. We have, I feel, a large number of enterprises, the large companies, the traditionally large companies, that have held sway on the continent, in economies, traditionally so for a long time, and naturally so. Digital transformation for them is to be able to unlearn a lot of their legacy and to relearn for a new future, to participate in a new digital economy. On the other end of the spectrum, we have specifically, and this is important to the context of Africa, the startup economy. A large number of startups are now starting to nip at the heels of these traditional enterprises. I'll take an example of the financial space, the fintech space. We find that to solve for financial inclusion, where the larger, more traditional financial institutions have found it difficult to move at the pace that is required to serve banking and financial services to the unbanked and even the underbanked, the fintech and the startup ecosystem has started to fill that gap. This has been largely in the space of digital wallets, the payments ecosystem, business banking, and soon I would venture corporate as well, because these startups are growing and scaling in the African space. And I'd like to say fueled by Google Cloud as well in doing so. Hope that answers your question.
Daniel, please.
So we see, to go back to the themes that Tarun mentioned earlier, data and AI being a big area that customers want to hear about. And customers are using. And they're using it for a number of reasons. One is just to understand, for example, their customer better. If you have a bank, they always struggle with different pieces of information about a particular client. Having one place where you can understand all of the different pieces of the customer unlocks a lot of value. So that's one area we see customers doing a lot, and we see it in the retail space across Africa. We see it in the financial space as well. The other area is obviously artificial intelligence. And this is an interesting one because it's not so much about artificial intelligence for artificial intelligence sake. It's how can we use artificial intelligence to do a number of things. And generally speaking, it's either create efficiency in the business, which is great for businesses. You drive cost down and cost of technology down, which is great. But also creating new experiences and new revenue streams for customers. And so it's not just about creating new flashy things with AI. It's about decreasing the cost to run the business through automation and increase the value and the revenue that you as a business can make. And we see this happening across the board. I think third area is really around cybersecurity. So, you know, the landscape and the threats that we see are growing very quickly. And the best way to address these is with the use of technology. So digital transformation in that context is critical. It's not a nice to have. It's absolutely necessary to embrace technology to be able to address the volume of threats, the type of threats that are evolving over time. And so, you know, these are the areas that we're working on. We work with government entities, we work with commercial sector entities, large and small, in these three areas, generally speaking, around digital transformation.
Yes, Mr. Tarun mentioned about the need of responsible and ethics use of AI. So, as we know, this AI revolution is one of the things that excites the youth. So how do you see the need of training of cybersecurity specialists in the continent? Yes, Mr. Towers.
Again, a very important question, and I'm hoping it deserves important consideration as well. If bad actors now have access to the same technology that we have access to now, one can automatically assume that there's going to be an escalation in how this technology can be used for nefarious purposes. So it's very important that in using our technology, specifically AI, responsibly, that we do so. We adopt these technologies to be able to fight cybersecurity threats. A good example here is threat intelligence. There are myriads of sources of threat intelligence out there. Tons of data that gets created, that gets generated. Just take a simple example of log files from servers. Tons of data. It's going to take a human being a copious amount of time to analyze that data, identify a threat, and potentially action it. Now, if a bad actor on the other end is using AI and technology, and it becomes or behoves us, AI ourselves, right? Applying these analytics, identifying key vulnerabilities, and taking action fast. I think that is going to be key here.
Okay. What about your insights?
Yeah, so what
on
we've
this training of cybersecurity specialists?
Specifically cybersecurity, yeah, we've seen this concept of the center of excellence has worked quite well within companies. And so, you know, a model that we've seen work very well is you take people that are straight out of university, you bring them into the organization as interns, you train them on with a rigorous program on the specific area of cybersecurity. So the tools to use, the techniques to use, the concepts that are there, and then once those people in that program are ready, and it's usually at least a year program, then they can go out into the organization and help the organization where they need it. What we're seeing happening is that some organizations have a surplus. They have more interns in the cohort than jobs to fit them, and that creates a nice opportunity for partnership. So this is where we all work together, right, to make sure that we're all safe. And
so you're talking about partnership with who?
With those organizations that have these programs.
Okay.
So, I was chatting with a bank, happened to be in South Africa recently, but the same model applies. They've got this program, they have trained more than they need. And so they ask us, can you take these people on? Do you have roles for them? Can you speak to your customers if they need cybersecurity specialists? And I think that's the place where we are now, is when it comes to things like cybersecurity, there's no point competing with each other for these skills. We can build them together and all benefit from them in that way.
Thank you. We'll just allow 2 questions from the audience. If anyone has a question, we'll allow 2 questions. Yes, I can see there someone. I said 2, and then we have 3. Okay, all right. Let's take them. Okay, 3 questions. I can see raising hands. Okay, start with you, this side. On our right side, yes, just here in the 2nd row, I guess, yes. Can you ask your questions, please? Your question, just 1 question per each. Oh, microphones, sorry for that. Maybe, so we need the support of the technician team to provide a microphone for the participants. Okay, maybe you will need translation. Okay, I'll try to help on that because I guess he's going to ask the question in Portuguese.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Appreciate that.
Okay, there we have we have the microphone now. Please, questions, not comments. Peço perdão, peço desculpas, creio que vai perguntar em português. Agradeço que coloquem mesmo perguntas e não façam comentários, que sejam telegráficos nas questões que vão colocar. São 3 questões que nós vamos aceitar, vamos acolher aqui para os representantes do painel. A primeira pessoa que levantou a mão é exatamente sim, ok? Faz favor o seu nome e a pergunta.
I can ask in English.
In English, okay.
All right. My name is Paulino Mwamba, and I have a question for Mr. The one is in the middle from the Google. Okay. Based on the investment that the CEO has made for Africa, and aligned with the ANGOTIC's motto for this year, which is digitize, connect, and innovate. When will we have a center like the other African countries in Angola? And what are the strategies that strategies breaking, right? Let me get back to this.
We said just one question. This is the second question.
Yeah. Strategies for breaking through the connection challenges and breaking down this project to the remote communities, given that the number of users in other provinces is quite small. That is my question.
Thank you for the question.
Can you just take first the questions and then your...
Oh, sure.
Okay. Is it possible?
We can do that, yeah.
Will you memorize? You trust you
We'll
memorize?
try my best, yes.
Okay. So when we keep getting old,
Yes,
we
you are right.
keep also forgetting things. All right. Segunda pergunta, se faz favor. Pois, o senhor que levantou a mão aqui do meio, devia ser. Bom, ok. Faz favor.
Okay. We also ask in English.
Oh, all right. Perfect.
My question will be for the representative of Google. as you told, you say that the most use of Google Cloud come here in Africa. I want to understand how can you explain about this? Because we are develop our infrastructure, why the most user of this service come to the Africa?
Last question, please. A question, please. Gostaríamos mesmo de ouvir perguntas diretas para
So, my name is Pedro Zau. I have a question for the representative of Google. My question is, so I can understand that I can understand the main of barriers of I can understand that the barriers of Google in front of Angola is the fault of abilities. So Angola have centers or other centers that especially... Estou pouco nervoso em português.
É melhor.
Yeah.
Temos tradução.
Sim.
Faz
Sim,
favor.
deu para notar que uma das maiores barreiras que a Google está a enfrentar cá é a falta de habilidades por parte das pessoas.
Lack of ability, capacity, skills. You know, this is one of the barriers he's just mentioning. Okay.
Uma vez que Angola já possui empresas focadas nessa área, não seria melhor investir nessas empresas?
Angola has companies that are, doing the role in this area. It's not better to invest on these companies so that they can, make things easy in terms of capacity building and, and training of the youth people. Yes.
I understand.
Maybe you can start from the last question, right?
No, actually, I picked up a theme in the questions, and I can potentially try and connect it all together. If I miss something, please keep me honest. So there was a question initially about when, and I think the question was when in the context of Angola. It's an important question because the reason we are here as Google, as Africa Digital Group, is to find answers ourselves to exactly that. The important aspect here is to build relationships, to identify the right partnerships within the corporate environment that is Angola, within the small to medium segment that is the economy that is Angola. What this allows us to do is to qualify demand. And once we have a strong understanding of demand, we send those signals back up to the Google mothership. So it's a very, and I'll take a leaf out of what my colleague Daniel said a little bit earlier. Somebody said to me yesterday, all good stories start with a beginning, and this is the beginning of the Angolan and Google story. We're going to put in the work to be able to identify and answer that question exactly when. And I think the follow-up question to that was what's happening, and in terms of the platforms and platforms that are being used from a Google perspective, and why not Africa? It is in fact it is in Africa that we're seeing a lot of these volumes. You just take one of our products in the broader Google umbrella, that is Android, and the penetration of Android devices on the continent. There's a large bank in Angola, and I'll take, without mentioning the name of the bank, I'll just take the example of the bank to make a point. 80% of this particular bank's customers are on the Android platform, right? Now, think about the opportunity that represents the data that this particular bank has access to as a consequence of that. Being informed allows you to act, and being informed allows you to act for the better. So I guess the question here, and the answer to your question is about making sure that we use the technology already in place and to build upon that to benefit Angola.
Just want to add one sentence here, and I really like the question, the last question here. Thank you for it. It's important to use the people and the capabilities in place already as well.
Correct.
So to answer that question directly, I think here as Africa Digital Group, it's best that we partner with the entities that are already in place, as you suggest. Because why? Why? Because of scale. Because, you know, I spoke about eating the elephant earlier. If you really want to eat the elephant, and there's another proverb I love.
This is another elephant.
Well, this is not an elephant.
Maybe from
This is about
Asia.
running a race. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Go together.
And I think that's the key in this particular instance, is it's about working together rather than in competition, because we're trying to eat a very big elephant. It must be an African bull, I think.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to the final words. But before that, as I understood from your answer for the Google, this is like a fact-finding mission that brought you here to Angola, to this ANGOTIC.
Correct.
Is that a yes or no question?
Yes.
Can it be a yes or no question?
It can be a yes or no question, but it deserves some elaboration.
Okay, you can go on.
No, and the answer is yes.
Okay.
This is not Google's first entry into Angola, but as some of the key individuals looking to make a difference in this space and bring Google Cloud and as a consequence digital transformation to Angola, yes, this is a fact-finding mission. And a lot more work needs to happen, as my friend Daniel mentioned, together to be able to establish that win.
Is it the same for the ADG?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
Beginning of your story in Angola?
we have a head
So
start.
partnership, investments.
We have a head start. We already have some presence here.
Okay.
I'd like to say we convinced Google to come here, but that's not really true. Again, we're partners. We see an opportunity here, and Google does too. So we're going to work together. And I really think we should have this same discussion in 1 year.
In 1 year?
Yeah.
You mean in next ANGOTIC?
Yes, and we have a review.
Okay,
We see-
our minister is there, he's just taking notes.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so
Very
it's,
good.
it's just a commitment.
Very good. I'll be
All
back.
right. Okay. Yes, let's go to the final word, starting with 30 seconds for Mr. Tarun Rao from Google Cloud Africa.
Thank you.
Final word.
I'll start my ending by saying it's a privilege to be here. I think you had positioned our presence here as a fact-finding mission, yes. But more importantly, from a Google perspective, what I find important is to seek like-minded people, like-minded partnerships, through which we can build together for Angola.
Thank you. Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, I think in closing, my summary is there is a lot of opportunity here in Angola. There is a lot of desire to do things, to innovate. And I think we're here to build, and we're here to really drive meaningful change and impact here in Angola.
Okay, let's see as highlights of this panel. We have digital strategies can be more accessible by building centers of excellence in Angola, or we're talking about African context, especially to target digital economy. And we have also one of the points raised, the need of data protection, and especially for the infrastructure, capacity building needed. Also trying to connect, digitalize, and innovate in very high level, taking into account the youth, responsibility in the use of AI. There is a need of responsible AI and responsible ethics. AI should be used for the benefit of human beings. That's one of the points. And to conclude, for the Google, this is a beginning of Angolan Google story. Thank you very much. So we've come to the end of the panel. And I'll ask applause to my panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's have a picture,
No.
family picture. So, yes. I don't know. So, you can say. Podes anunciar. Já a tua parte. A parte da mestre cerimónia.
Muito obrigada, senhores. Thank you, gentlemen. You can now take your seats. Thank you so much. Not this seat over there. Your party is over. Thank you so much. Senhoras e senhores, chegamos então ao fim deste segundo dia. Amanhã vamos estar de volta aqui neste palco para a cerimónia de encerramento. O ministro apenas quer apertar as mãos aos convidados. Amanhã vamos estar então aqui de volta para a cerimónia de encerramento, que será o terceiro e último dia do ANGOTIC 2024. Muito obrigada a todos. O resto, bom dia. Saibam que vai haver sessões paralelas em todas as salas, tanto aqui no CCTA como também no HCTA. Muito obrigada e resto, bom dia.
Onde lá é de pra levar, é de pra levar, é de pra levar, é de pra levar. E tem que limoenar com sangue tem que limoenar com sangue onde lá eu awabele mukizua kwenyoko pala mutu kyoso kya shinganeka eu awabele mukizua kwenyoko é de pra levar, é de que ele manda com sangue.